Hello there, one and all, and thank you very much for tuning in to episode 499. That is 499 of Love at First Scent with me, Persolaise, live on YouTube. As always, we have some comments. Shan says, hello, thanks for staying for all three videos, Shan. David says, I very much look forward to Mr. P's reviews. Thank you. It's always so refreshing, genuine, transparent, and honest. Thank you for keeping it real for us. I do try. The check is in the post, David. Thank you. Alex says, a vintage masterpiece treat on a cold and rainy afternoon. How wonderful and uplifting. How I love Joy. Yeah, now 499. I'm going to save my thank yous for helping me make it to 500 on Monday. So very, very briefly, I will just remind you that at 4 p.m. UK time on Monday, 7th of October, we're going to mark the 500th episode with a special interview with Amouage's Renaud Salmon. So start thinking of your questions for Renaud. But I thought we would finish today's videos with a couple of vintage gems. The palette cleanser video says Amethyst Glow. Absolutely. After the delights of the first two videos, I thought we ought to do something that we know or I knew is going to be amazing. So these were two beauties that I picked up recently on my travels. I refer you to an earlier video where I talked about these amazing finds at kind of off the beaten track, dusty Italian perfumeries. These were Italian purchases as well. And I was just so delighted to see that they were in really good condition when I opened them. So first, let's look at Caron's Yatagan, originally from 1976, credited to, it's either going to be Vincent or Vincent Marcello, who was the nose behind Lauder's private collection, of all things, and also one of the Halston scents. So clearly creating some amazing things in the 70s. It's so sad that they discontinued. Patou says, Alex, yeah, well, let's save that's when we get to this one. Yatagan says, Jeff, urine time. Well, we can talk about that as well. This is, I mean, I snapped this up because I wish it had been a spray, but it's not a spray, it's a splash. I snapped this up because the ingredients are alcohol, perfume, water, and I think some kind of coloring. But I guess the bottle can't be sort of, ancient, because it's got the little recycling thing. Do they call it the green dot? Which I suppose means that it must be, does that mean that it must be at least late 80s or early 90s? I'm not sure. There are people who know more about this sort of thing than I do, but it certainly doesn't have the list of allergens. Now, Yatagan is a funny one because I've usually had a kind of love-hate, incomprehension type relationship with it, and at one point I even gave away a bottle of a sort of relatively recent formulation of it that I had, but it was one of these ones that always stayed in my mind, and I kept thinking that perhaps I ought to just have a bottle of it in my collection for the sake of having it. I think what I found off-putting in the bottle that I used to have, I couldn't wear it. I found I couldn't wear it. There was a kind of stewed, overly boiled, overly cooked vegetable note that was maybe sort of overly boiled onions or leeks or celery, particularly celery, something that was too herbaceous, maybe a lot of dill that just seemed a bit too screechy and a bit too loud and a bit too in your face, and I could never take it. But this is something else. See, that note is in here. So this is the EDT from we don't know when. That note absolutely is there, but it's just much more convincingly and much more successfully blended into a whole load of other things. So you get a beautiful pine-like note coming through. It's a real contrast in freshness and warmth and depth, a real contrast in vitality and something that is somehow a lot more static. The name refers to, I believe, a Turkish saber, a sort of short saber or short sword. And there is something aggressive about the scent as well. There is something very, very definitely, 70s hairy chest about it. But I think you also get the sense that the person who this represents, or the person this evokes, has so much authority that they don't actually ever have to wield the sword. They don't have to use the sword. It's enough that everybody else knows that they have the sword. So that the knowledge of the sword is the deterrent in itself. That threat of violence is there, or that threat of physical strength is there, but it never actually has to be used, because you know that you do not mess with this person. You do not mess with this particular Yatagan holder. Strong celery note, but I love it, says Gender Goblin. Yeah, sounds like my working week, says Tracy. Oh, well done. I think you should consider wearing Yatagan. Now, I had a very, very quick look on the Caron website before we started, and I was delighted to see, I have to say, that Yatagan is still part of the current lineup, but I have no idea what it smells like. And actually, when I come to think of it, I'm sure I've seen it at French Sephora's, alongside Pour un Homme, which is still doing extremely well as far as I know. Is it like the Elder Wand, says Jeff. Now, that's a reference I don't get. What's that a reference to? Jug says, that's my issue with Yatagan too. I get no pine, just celery. Okay, well, the vintage works really well, and the vintage works extremely well on skin. And the ultimate test was Madame Persolaise, because one of the reasons I gave my other bottle away, my older but newer bottle away, was because she just couldn't stand smelling it on me. And I thought, well, I'm never going to wear this, and I don't like it that much, so let me just give it away. But this stuff she likes. And she acknowledges that there is something weird and off and just a bit kind of skewed, just a bit sort of off kilter about it, just something a bit threatening, but she really, really does like it. And I think it's the warmth. Official notes include things like labdanum, leather, oak moss, musks, ambery notes, but it's that fantastic contrast between all of those things and the herbs. You've got tarragon, the greenness of galbanum, the pine needles, etc., the brightness of geranium. It is good stuff. It is good stuff. SOMar says, don't know how these smell, but have always wanted to try Joy. We'll get to Joy in a moment. I struggle a bit with Yatagan for some reason, says Sentiment. It smells a bit medicinal and almost Uranus on me. I have to revisit it. Or maybe it's just the current formulations. Maybe it's this older formulation that works. Now, I did also do a pre-dipped blotter. Yeah, and it just, the contrasts remain. The balance is just so beautiful, impeccable, just perfect. You've got the pine on the one side, you've got real heat and warmth from the leather and the amber on the other side. It just puts so many modern compositions to shame, really, really does. And there's hardly anything else like it out there. I remember, which was the État Libre d'Orange scent, which was quite close to this one. Was it the one that had like the, was it, what was it? Something Traitor. What was that one called? There was definitely one that was trying to do like a Yatagan thing, I seem to remember. And Éloge du Traître or something like that. Yeah, it was that one. I think it was that one, probably long gone. But other than those two, I can't think of really any other masculines that do this sort of thing, this weird, herbal, fresh, heated, leathery, flowery thing. And Caron have done so many superb masculines. And Troisième Homme, that came a few years after this one, is just beautiful, or was just beautiful. Anyway, let us move on to the sad, sad, sad story of Joy. Joy, of course, originally came out in 1935, credited to Henri Almeras, one of the greatest perfumers of all time. And at one point it was considered to be, and I think it called itself, the most expensive perfume ever made. And I think this was because of the high dose of rose and jasmine materials in it. I was really, really fortunate a few years ago, really, really fortunate to smell an original version of it at the Osmothèque in Versailles, the perfume archive, the repository. And it was just something else. The original Joy in good condition is just like this endless, like a sort of infinity carpet of rose and jasmine. You don't know where the rose ends and where the jasmine starts. They're in perfect harmony with each other, and they just keep unfurling and unfurling, and they keep going for as far as the eye can see and further, just kind of bringing all this exquisite rose and jasmine beauty towards you. I seem to remember before the scent was killed by Dior, that modern iterations, I think, went closer towards the rose, I seem to think, than they did the jasmine. But the original one was just sort of this seamless canopy of rose and jasmine together. A lot of you will know that, I think, and I don't want to get the facts of this wrong, but I believe that LVMH must have acquired the rights to Jean Patou, and then basically they sort of discontinued the brand, and then they came out with a Dior perfume called Joy, which was nothing like Patou's Joy and was not a particularly interesting perfume, and I don't even know how it's doing. If you can get vintage Joy Extrait, I'm fortunate enough to have a few drops of it. It's heavenly. This is the EDT, which I think I should probably keep in the fridge, really, because it's so special. So wrong that Joy was discontinued, says Equi-Styled. It was such an icon. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you do it. I would love to know what Francis Kurgian, current perfumer at Dior, thinks of that. I mean, obviously, there is no way that on the record he would ever give me an honest view, because he wouldn't be able to. But yeah, I didn't know this is the backstory, says Rachel. I'm willing to be corrected if it isn't, but that is certainly my current understanding of the story. So if somebody knows better, or if I've said something that's inaccurate or incorrect, please feel free to correct me. But I do think that that is how it played out, how it happened. And obviously Dior had to have the rights to release a perfume called Joy. And I think one way of doing that was by ensuring there wasn't another perfume called Joy. Anyway, vintage Joy EDT. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's like, it's got a sort of heavenly. I mean, this is a carpet to heaven. Heavenly aldehydic opening as well. But then straight away, it's that whole, is it rose, is it jasmine? And that's quite an interesting technical feat, because rose and jasmine, I'm sure they have several features in common, but they also do smell really quite different from each other. I mean, jasmine has got those banana facets, the tobacco-y facets, the indolic facets, but rose we associate with aspects that are peppery and dewy and creamy and honeyed and sweeter. But somehow the fact that they're brought together in this, just with utter seamlessness, it is really beautiful stuff. Really beautiful. And you can see how decades later this led to things, other astonishing roses like Naema, which also has that hugely expansive, kind of like mind-expanding quality to it. It's just heavenly. I wonder what the actual, I've got the list of notes here. So, well, the list of notes also claims there's tuberose and ylang ylang. Well, I guess there would be ylang ylang, and actually maybe the ylang ylang would be an interesting link between the rose and the jasmine. Maybe that's what is the bridge. Lily of the Valley, apparently. Iris, sandalwood. Yes, I would say you can definitely get the sandalwood coming through. It is just divine. Really divine. Surely one of the best perfumes ever made. I mean, seriously. And this is a pre-dipped one. It's just expertly done. And this is probably, going back to a time when perfumers had lots and lots of time at their disposal. They could tweak, they could play around, they could try different ideas out. And then they were allowed to make something that was timeless. They were able to make something that was timeless. Really something else. It's hard to find vintage bottles in really good condition. I know, Rachel. I was so lucky. I mean, I was really, really, really lucky because I also didn't know what I was getting when I got these. I had to go back to where we were staying and open them, with bated breath. But I got lucky. I got lucky. Right. So we have reached the end of episode 499. I can't quite believe it. When I told Madame Persolaise, she said, "What? You've done nearly 500 episodes?" I said, "Yes, I know." Anyway, we will save the celebrations for Monday. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Thanks for helping me get to 500. I will see you on Monday. Until then, be good. Bye now.